Many people believe that since we live in the time of technology, it should be used to solve almost any problem in our lives. After all, people have learned to perform complex operations, create virtual reality, and even launch rockets into space. However, there are situations where real problems can only be solved with the help of true fate and human relationships. Well, knowledge and even the most prominent technologies are absolutely powerless. This is exactly the kind of incredible incident that happened in an American hospital when a woman's life hung in the balance after she gave birth. Now, let me get ahead of myself and say that it was only thanks to one sudden and seemingly strange decision by a nurse that a real miracle happened, one that no one can still explain. 23-year-old Shelley Colley from South Carolina and her husband Jeremy never imagined that one day they'd have to become a major medical sensation. They were the most ordinary couple. They led a healthy lifestyle, and after having a big wedding, they started planning to have a baby. Both partners took it very responsibly. When Shelley found out she was pregnant, instead of just calling and telling her husband, she arranged an entire celebration. Jeremy, the father-to-be, was on cloud nine. Thus, the couple spent the next 8 months in anticipation, until one day the doctors told them that their baby was in danger and that they needed to perform an emergency C-section. Unfortunately, the birth of their much-awaited baby nearly turned tragic for the Colley family. Before going under anesthesia for several hours, Shelley held her husband's hand until the very last moment. Meanwhile, he stayed by her side and tried to support his beloved wife in every possible way. The experienced doctors knew their job well, so the surgery was successful, and little Rylan was born completely healthy. Jeremy was so happy to see his daughter and hold her for the first time that he forgot about all his worries. However, he didn't know it yet, but something had happened to his beloved Shelley. Just 2 minutes later, the new father was informed that his wife had fallen into a coma. Even though Shelley had no contraindications to the surgery apparently, her body couldn't handle the anesthesia and stress. Shelley threw a blood clot, which traveled to her brain and provoked a coma. Her lungs quickly filled up with fluid, and her oxygen levels were going down. The doctors also said that her blood pressure was very high, and that surgeons were fighting for her life in the operating room at that very moment. Unfortunately, the situation was very difficult, and it was highly unlikely that the doctors would be able to save her. Can you imagine what the poor husband had to go through? Getting to see and hold his baby for the first time? Jeremy wanted to jump for joy, but he couldn't because, at the same time, the doctors were fighting for the life of his beloved wife. All he could do was hope for a miracle and wait for the doctors to do their job. It's worth noting that about an hour of manipulations had no effect, and when the surgeons were already preparing for the worst, a nurse, Ashley Menus, came up with a brilliant idea. The woman wasn't sure if what she was suggesting made any sense, but she knew that medical studies had proven that skin-to-skin contact between mother and child could help babies. But what if it could work the other way around too? What if it could awaken Shelley's maternal instincts? After the nurse's suggestion, there was a moment of silence in the operating room. But since there were no other ideas, the doctors decided to grab this last straw even though it seemed rather unlikely to work. Just a couple of minutes later, the baby was already at her mother's side. However, as soon as she was near Shelley, the baby immediately fell asleep, and all attempts to wake her up were in vain. Then there was only one thing left to do. The nurse took the sleeping baby in her arms and put her on her mother. And at that moment, the baby girl began to cry loudly. And after just a few seconds, a real medical miracle happened. Science still can't explain this phenomenon, but the sensors showed that Shelley's brain had started working. The doctors looked at the monitors in shock. The nurse's idea had worked. After touching her daughter, the young mother came out of the coma. And after a week of regular skin-to-skin therapy between mother and baby, Shelley fully recovered and was able to hold her baby in her arms. To say that it was a real miracle is an understatement, but that's exactly what happened. The Colley family thanked Nurse Ashley endlessly. However, no amount of gifts or words could ever be enough to express their gratitude for what she had done for them. In turn, the modest nurse kept saying that one day, little Rylan would learn how she had performed a real miracle, because it was the little baby who saved her mother's life. Even though no one really knows how it worked, the story has a happy ending, and it teaches us one very important lesson: never give up. Always believe in miracles, even if all hope seems lost. Friends, have you ever been in a situation where it was only a true miracle or some invisible force that influenced the outcome?